Tensions in London. A society divided. The protest clash that could tear the nation apart. London, the global city known for its diversity and tolerance, found itself at the centre of chaos as thousands of demonstrators took to the streets. But this was no ordinary protest. It was a boiling pot of political ideologies, religious beliefs, and clashing moral convictions. The conflict that has torn apart the Middle East is now threatening to spill over into British society, dividing it in ways that could leave permanent scars. The protesters didn't just voice their opinions, they were on a collision course. What began as two opposing rallies ended in violent clashes with law enforcement, as both sides hurled accusations of favouritism and bias. Two-tiered policing. Is the UK justice system crumbling under pressure? The pro-Palestinian demonstration started peacefully, but soon it was no longer about holding up banners or chanting slogans. As the crowd grew, so did the tension, and clashes with police broke out. The chant for freedom for Palestine seemed to electrify the atmosphere, making way for an aggressive face-off with law enforcement officers. On the other side of town, pro-Israel protesters had gathered, waving signs condemning Hamas, a group designated as a terrorist organisation by the UK government. However, a puzzling scene unfolded when police physically prevented the pro-Israel demonstrators from approaching the pro-Palestinian rally, threatening arrest if they came any closer. It was a dramatic moment that left many wondering. Is the UK's police force practicing selective enforcement of the law? Are we witnessing the emergence of a two-tiered justice system? Social media exploded with reactions after a video surfaced showing pro-Israel protesters being held back by the police. Their signs reading, "Hamas is a terrorist," were visible as they were told to stay away from the opposing rally. Many onlookers were enraged, questioning why one group seemed to be granted more freedom than the other. What was happening to freedom of speech? And why were certain voices being stifled? Extremist influence. Who really controls the streets? The protests revealed a disturbing undercurrent, the influence of extremist factions on both sides. In one particularly alarming clip, a man can be seen angrily confronting pro-Israel protesters, shouting that Hamas are freedom fighters and warning, "They will finish all of you off." The blatant support for a group labelled as terrorists by the UK government has shaken the public, raising concerns about national security and the growing radicalisation within the nation's borders. The failure to immediately arrest this man has only added fuel to the fire. How could someone who openly supports violence not be detained on the spot? This lapse in judgment by law enforcement has led to calls for greater transparency and accountability. The silence from the authorities has been deafening, further intensifying the belief that the system is playing favourites. Extremist groups like these are not merely participating in peaceful protests, they are exploiting the situation to advance their violent ideologies. Their presence complicates an already volatile environment, amplifying tensions to the point where peaceful dialogue seems impossible. And yet, the police appear to be handling them with kid gloves, sparking outrage across all sectors of British society. The role of media, biased narratives, or honest reporting. As videos of the protests went viral, so too did accusations of media bias. Both sides of the political spectrum claimed that the media had skewed the narrative, favouring one group over the other. Pro-Palestinian demonstrators accused news outlets of portraying them as violent aggressors, while pro-Israel supporters argued that their voices were being drowned out entirely. Media watchdogs have pointed out that the coverage of these protests is symptomatic of a larger problem in the UK, where news outlets often cater to specific political biases rather than offering neutral, fact-based reporting. This has only deepened public distrust, with more and more citizens feeling that they are not being given the full story. Is UK democracy at risk? The growing threat of divisive politics. The controversy surrounding these protests is not just about law enforcement or media bias. It speaks to a much larger issue at the heart of British society, the erosion of democratic principles. With both sides claiming victimhood, public trust in the political system is reaching a breaking point. The polarization is so extreme that even the basic tenets of free speech and peaceful assembly are being questioned. In a country that prides itself on democratic values, these divisions feel like cracks in the foundation. As extremists from both sides become more vocal and violent, it raises a critical question. Is the UK prepared to handle this level of internal strife? More importantly, can British society survive this clash of ideologies? Or are we witnessing the early stages of a democratic unravelling? Rachel Reeves and the austerity debate. Is the UK government out of touch? While the streets of London are filled with protesters, the political elite are locked in a battle of their own. Labour Chancellor Rachel Reeves has come under fire for her decision to cut £22 billion from the foreign aid budget, a move seen as a severe blow to the UK's international reputation. Reeves has defended her decision as necessary austerity, claiming that the money is needed to rebuild the national economy. But critics, including several prominent members of her own cabinet, argue that this is short-sighted and will have devastating consequences for the UK's standing in the global community. Foreign Secretary David Lammy is among those pushing back against Reeves, urging her to reconsider the cuts. He warns that scaling back foreign aid will damage the UK's ability to influence international affairs at a time when global conflicts are escalating. These cuts, according to Lammy and others, will push the UK's aid budget to its lowest level in nearly 2 decades, with humanitarian programmes worldwide facing the brunt of the impact. The internal Labour Party divide highlights the broader challenge facing the government, balancing economic recovery with the nation's responsibility to the global community. But is this debate really about fiscal responsibility, or is it another example of how out of touch the government has become with the needs of its citizens? Many feel that Reeves's austerity measures are a continuation of failed Tory policies and a betrayal of the Labour Party's core values. Princess Kate. Is she the royal family's distraction strategy? As political tensions reach a fever pitch, the British royal family is once again in the spotlight. But are they part of the problem? Princess Kate has returned to the public eye in recent weeks, attending high-profile events and making headlines with her philanthropic endeavours. However, some critics argue that the timing of her return is suspicious, questioning whether these royal engagements are being used to divert attention from the growing unrest in the country. Kate's recent public appearances, including her congratulatory message to Sir Ben Ainslie, have sparked debate about the role of the royal family during times of crisis. Is their presence a reassuring constant in an otherwise turbulent time? Or is it a deliberate distraction from the real issues at hand, such as budget cuts, protests, and growing political instability? Whether or not the royal family is consciously steering the public discourse, there's no denying that they remain central to British culture. But as the country grapples with larger existential questions about its future, the monarchy's relevance is once again being called into question. Are they merely symbols of a bygone era, or do they still hold power in shaping public opinion and policy? UK's future, chaos, or resolution? The unrest in London is a microcosm of the greater turmoil sweeping across the UK. From the streets to the highest levels of government, there is a sense that the nation is standing at a crossroads. Extremist factions, political infighting, and a seemingly complicit media are contributing to a climate where trust is eroding and tensions are escalating. If the UK is to avoid a complete societal fracture, it will need to confront these issues head-on. The nation must decide, will it remain a beacon of democracy, or will it fall victim to the same divisions that have led to turmoil in other parts of the world? What do you think? Thank you for reading this article. We want to hear from you. Do you think the police are playing favourites in how they handle protests? Is Chancellor Reeves's decision to cut foreign aid the right move? Is Princess Kate being used as a distraction? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to stay informed on the latest breaking news and critical issues affecting the UK today.